Everyone says they want freedom, but watch closely, and you'll see that most people don't. They don't want freedom, they want permission, permission to act, permission to think, permission to be who they already are, as if someone else's approval makes their existence valid. We talk about freedom like it's a right, but for most, it's a responsibility they're not ready to carry. Freedom sounds beautiful until you realize what it actually demands. It means no one to blame, no one to guide you, no one to tell you what's right. It means being accountable not just for your actions, but for your thoughts, your beliefs, your outcomes. That's why most people don't really seek freedom. They seek structure with less pain. They want a safe rebellion, a controlled chaos, a system that feels free but still tells them what to do. I've watched this pattern for years. People say, I just want to be my own boss. Then they create a new cage, a business that owns them even more than their job did. Or they say, I want to think for myself. Then they follow influencers like disciples, replacing one authority with another. They don't want freedom, they want to change who's in charge of them. If this already feels uncomfortably true, pause for a moment and follow rich logic. Because freedom begins the moment you realize you've been trained to ask for permission your entire life. Think about it. From the day you're born, you're conditioned to seek approval. Parents, teachers, bosses, society, religion, every system rewards obedience, not awareness. You learn that following rules earns love, that fitting in earns safety, that doing what's expected keeps you alive. By adulthood, you've built an identity out of compliance. You're not free, you're approved. And when you're approved, you don't think. You perform. You do what others expect and call it the right thing. You ask before you move. You seek validation before you speak. You hesitate before you act. And the world rewards you for it because obedient people are predictable and predictable people are profitable. The system doesn't need to imprison you anymore. It just needs to keep you comfortable enough not to rebel and confused enough not to notice. So it gives you illusions of choice, thousands of products, careers, ideologies, but every path still leads to dependence. You're told to be free, but only if it fits within an acceptable version of freedom. Freedom in the modern world has become a managed illusion. The irony, freedom is what every human secretly craves, and simultaneously what every human fears the most. Because freedom destroys excuses. Once you're truly free, you can't hide behind anyone. You can't say, they made me do it. You can't blame society, the economy, the government, or your parents. You have to face the mirror and realize you built your own walls. Real freedom doesn't feel like happiness at first. It feels like vertigo, because suddenly there's no ceiling above you, but also no floor beneath you, and that's where most people panic. They run back to structure, back to certainty, back to asking permission. Because they don't want to lead their life, they just want to navigate someone else's map. Freedom is terrifying because it exposes truth. It shows you how much of your personality was borrowed from expectations. It reveals that your routines, your beliefs, and even your dreams might not be yours at all. That's the real crisis of adulthood, not failure, but the realization that you've never actually lived your own script. If you're starting to feel that discomfort right now, good. Like this video and subscribe to Rich Logic. Because discomfort is the doorway through which freedom enters. Here's the paradox. People want freedom until they realize it comes with solitude. Freedom isolates. It separates you from the crowd. It turns comfort into question marks. You start to see that most people's conversations are just fear disguised as logic. That most arguments aren't about truth, they're about validation. And that most relationships are built on shared delusions, not shared dreams. That's why true freedom feels lonely at first. Because when you stop asking for permission, you stop belonging to groups that define themselves through control. You become unclassifiable, unmanageable, unpredictable. And in a world built on control, nothing is more threatening than a person who can't be managed. Freedom means detaching from identity itself. You stop saying, I'm this kind of person, and start asking, what if I'm more? You stop defending opinions and start studying your mind. You stop clinging to the tribe and start trusting your intuition. That's real independence, not material, but mental. Freedom isn't rebellion, it's self-responsibility. It means you don't need permission to believe differently, to move differently, to fail publicly, to reinvent yourself endlessly. It means you stop performing for acceptance and start creating from authenticity. But here's the cruel twist. The system knows this. That's why it keeps selling you counterfeit freedom. Express yourself, but only within the algorithm. Be unique, but buy the same products. Think for yourself, but only if it's trending. You're allowed to be free as long as your freedom still benefits the structure that controls you. That's not liberation, that's monetized rebellion. Most people don't realize that asking for permission is a habit, not a rule. They wait for signs, for validation, for the perfect timing, for someone to say, yes, now you can. But permission is a mirage. No one's coming to grant it. The gates to freedom were never locked. You were just trained to stop walking. You don't need permission to change your life. You need courage to confront what you've become comfortable with. Because the moment you stop asking, you start acting. And the moment you act, you realize freedom was never external. It was an internal threshold you refused to cross. Freedom is earned in silence, in choices no one applauds, in risks no one understands. It's in the decision to leave when it's easier to stay, to speak when it's safer to be quiet, to build when it's safer to consume. Every act of independence feels uncomfortable because it dismantles an invisible authority you didn't know you worshipped. The truth is, you don't need anyone's permission to start, but you do need your own forgiveness for waiting this long. You weren't weak, you were conditioned. Every system you grew up in taught you to play small, to obey, to seek external validation. But you can unlearn it, right now. The first act of freedom is to stop explaining yourself. Stop convincing people to understand your vision. Stop waiting for approval before you act on instinct. Because the moment you start needing validation, you hand your freedom to whoever gives it. Freedom means acting without applause, moving without consensus, believing without confirmation. That's why so few people truly live it. It's a harder high to maintain. Freedom isn't sexy, it's lonely, it's quiet, it's full of choices that make you look insane to those still asleep. But it's also the only path where peace feels earned. Because you stop negotiating with fear. You stop explaining your worth. You stop needing permission to breathe fully. Here's the hardest truth. People don't fear losing freedom. They fear earning it. Because the price of freedom is accountability. And most people would rather suffer in control than thrive in uncertainty. That's why revolutions start with rage and end with rules. Because once the chaos settles, people beg for someone to tell them what to do again. It's the cycle of comfort repeating itself, disguised as order. You break that cycle the moment you realize that no one's coming to save you. That your permission slip to live differently has been sitting in your own hand all along. Freedom doesn't come from governments, leaders, or systems. It comes from courage disguised as defiance. So the next time you say you want freedom, ask yourself, do you really want it? Or do you just want to be told it's okay to have it? Because most people don't want freedom. They want permission, and that's why the world stays the same. But you can choose differently. You can stop waiting for someone to open the door. You can stop seeking validation for wanting more. You can start building a life that doesn't need applause to be meaningful. Freedom isn't given, it's taken. And once you take it, you never go back.